It's a big experiment.
Hallo, goedemorgen iedereen.
School's out thanks to the coronavirus, but millions of children are learning online from home. An exciting challenge for some, even if it's just yoga for kids. But the digital playing field is anything but level. What if you don't have access to the latest tech? Or your teacher can't call you every day? Access to education could leave a whole lot of people behind.
Hi, I'm Ben Fazulin. The teachers I've spoken to think it's great. The virtual classroom puts the onus on children to discipline themselves. 1.5 billion students are off school around the world, but class has gone online for many. In nations with poor internet coverage, kids are turning to radio and TV. But does that put them at a disadvantage?
16-year-old Emmanuel Leah has been out of school since March 18. Schools were closed in Cameroon in an effort to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Emmanuel now takes classes daily through television. Lectures are given in English and French. The idea is to help students like Emmanuel, who will be taking his junior high school exams in June.
This idea to teach students on television is a really good idea, especially for me, which I'm in from 5, and I see that and I know that it's going to help me to pick up, to know things that I don't know, and I can see that it's really helping me. At least I know the things that I didn't know before.
At least 3 local TV stations are producing similar programs. Teachers are paid by the country's education ministry. On this station, every teacher gets 20 minutes of lecture time. Zeh Zambo has been an English instructor for 6 years. Teaching on camera is new for him.
All children have right to education, and if this method can help them acquiring knowledge or have that right or enjoying that right, I fully support it. And also for the reason that even adults can learn through this method. So I am 100% for it.
Due to frequent power blackouts, Emmanuel is forced to miss some classes. Other students in Cameroon have no access to TV sets at all. Emmanuel wants to study medicine, but he's concerned his dreams will be delayed if schools remain closed due to the pandemic.
Andreas Schleicher is a special advisor on education policy at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. How are kids dealing with this leap in technology? We are talking about digital natives here, but at the end of the day, it's their education at stake.
Yeah, you have plenty of children who are well equipped, who have access to the technology, access to high quality learning resources. But it's not just a matter of the digital resources. Learning is always a relational process. We learn with and from people. So to study on your own, you need to have the motivation to see the value of education. You need to have the effective learning strategies, the resilience to struggle, to learn from failure, with failure. And it's often those qualities that we are just developing. In a way, in the past, we spoon-fed young people in school. We gave them little chunks to learn and to repeat. Now suddenly they have to study on their own, and that's a very, very different experience. So apart from the technology, it's a novel experience. Some students succeed very well. They have great support from the parents. They have, great motivation. But many, many young children are left behind.
So with or without the technology, then, what about children from disadvantaged backgrounds or developing countries?
Well, this crisis is amplifying the inequalities that were already inherent in our education systems before. We always struggle to attract the most talented teachers to the most challenging classrooms to make sure that every student has access to excellent teaching. So I think in this moment is very, very important that education systems redouble their efforts to reach out to the families and the students who struggle most. And that means freeing up some time from teachers to actually dedicate to those kids. They will not succeed just left on their own devices.
You mentioned families there. What about parents?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a matter of connecting with parents. It's bringing, parents to this mission. Education is becoming a whole of society project, not just, a schooling project. You need the support from parents. You need the understanding from parents. Parents need to give their children, access to a quiet place to study. And that's not the case for all children. They need to give them access to the computer maybe that they may also need for their work. So I think it's a sacrifice on everybody's part.
Do you fear this could end up being a lost year for students around the world?
Well, I hope not. I don't think we can afford it. I think there would be a terrible price for humanity to pay. And I also think we should be cognizant of the many, many good examples. I mean, this crisis has liberated a lot of energy. Education systems with a lot of frontline capacity, where schools, operate with a significant autonomy. Teachers are designers of innovative learning environments. Those are actually thriving at this moment. And I think what we should do is not, stop pushing ideas into classroom and spend more time on, finding those good ideas, sharing them, scaling them, spreading them. I think that's exactly what is needed at this moment of time. There are teachers who invest, their lives to make this work. And I think we need to give them the space and the support to do their work.
Let's have a quick listen to what some students and teachers think about online schooling.
For me, it is easier to work at school because the teacher explains everything. Teaching the actual school curriculum, I often feel totally overwhelmed. We are not trained to teach these things. I find learning much easier at school because I take an active role in class. When I sit in class, I take a lot in and therefore I have to do less at home.
So Andreas, how can governments make this work?
Well, I think, first of all, it is to look at the good examples. There are many teachers who are struggling, but there are also lots of teachers full of motivation and energy to make this work. Teachers who are becoming good, coaches, good mentors, good facilitators. I think what governments need to do at this moment is to direct resources where they can make most of a difference. Typically, we do the opposite. If you come from a wealthy background, we give you the better teacher, the better school. I think in this moment, governments need to look harder. Where are the resources really needed and how to direct them? Governments also should, think hard of what students should learn at this moment. Clearly, learning time will be reduced, will shrink. We cannot put that on the shoulders of schools. Governments need to decide what is the essential part that really students need to learn, and prioritizing, learning is a very important task for governments. And then, providing teachers with good online support. Yes, it's a big challenge for teachers. Teachers are not prepared for this, but I think, again, teachers can learn, and if we give them the right, access to professional development, I think we will see a quantum change.
Andreas Schleicher, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
To our viewer questions now on the coronavirus, here's Derek Williams.
Could the virus mutate further? If that happens, how dangerous would it be?
To answer this question, we have to first look at what mutation means exactly. Now, in biology, mutation describes alterations to the genetic code in an organism or a virus. In a virus like SARS-CoV-2, these changes happen during replication, when an invaded cell is churning out new copies of the virus. Now, all viruses mutate. It's how the coronavirus jumped to humans in the first place. It mutated to do so. Moving forward, though, what'll be key is exactly how the virus mutates. Can it change in ways that make it more infectious or that make it more deadly? That's what matters to us. Those kinds of mutations are generally ones that have an effect on the virus's physical structures. For example, the spikes that dot the outer surface of SARS-CoV-2 that allow it to latch on to human cells. So far, although we know the new coronavirus will mutate, and we can even track those mutations as the virus spreads, there's no evidence that it's mutating into even more dangerous strains. But there's no way to rule out that it might happen in the future.
HIV still causes AIDS today with no real vaccine or cure. What are the odds COVID-19 could be the same?
The big reason why we've struggled to come up with a vaccine for HIV is that the process it uses to produce copies of itself is very prone to making mistakes. So the virus mutates rapidly. Most of those mistakes won't work out, but a few will prove beneficial to the virus in the sense that the changes will allow it to continue to evade a patient's immune system. HIV is really a moving target, so it's hard to come up with an effective vaccine. But SARS-CoV-2 is very different from HIV in a very key way. It proofreads its genetic code during replication, and proofreading slows the mutation rate. That means the SARS-CoV-2 genome so far appears to remain stable or more stable than HIV over time. That's giving researchers hope that they'll be able to develop effective, long-lasting vaccines against the coronavirus. But because we're still at such an early stage of observing its evolution, it's still just a hope.
We don't have hand sanitizer here. Someone suggested using the cheapest gin mixed with aloe vera. Would that work?
Along with toilet paper, hand sanitizer has become a hard-to-find product in most parts of the world, and manufacturers have really struggled to keep up with demand. So, can you protect yourself by making your own from distilled spirits? Alcohol is the disinfecting component in most hand sanitizers. It works by unfolding and deactivating proteins that are found in the outer envelope that coats viruses like SARS-CoV-2. The problem with trying to make your own hand sanitizer is that most spirits, like gin, are only around 40% alcohol, which isn't enough to kill the virus effectively. Commercial hand sanitizers are around 60% alcohol by volume. Experts also warn that homemade sanitizer can be bad for your skin, so in general, it's probably a good idea to stay away from them. Don't forget there's a more straightforward way to disinfect your hands. Just wash them regularly for at least 20 seconds with soap and warm water.